Jam. Toon Jam.
Hello and welcome to Toon Jam. I am Matt.
And I'm Jamin.
And today we are talking all about WildC.A.T.S. C-A-T-S. Full stops in between. C-A-T-S. C-A-T-S. WildC.A.T.S. I'll stop doing that now. WildC.A.T.S. is a half-hour animated television series based on the comics series of the same name and developed for television by David Wise. It aired on CBS for one season from October 1st, 1994 to January 21st, 1995. The series was produced by Wildstorm Productions in association with Nelvana Limited. DC Comics now own the rights to the characters due to their purchase of Wildstorm in 1999. This was also David Wise's only show for Nelvana and until Corn and Peg, that absolute classic.
Oh yeah, of course. When Corn and Peg was there, yeah.
It's a Nick Jr. show apparently. Produced quite a while later. As far as marketing tie-ins, there was a video game of the series. That was in '95 for the SNES, with Spartan, Warblade, and Maul as the only playable characters. Also, Playmates Toys released a toy line based on the TV series, obviously because it's the '90s. If you've got a TV series for kids, it's got toys. Though this, I believe, was available at least Western wide as opposed to just Brazil, which is what we find a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Strangely. 4 VHS tapes with 2 episodes each were released in the 1990s. Funimation released the complete series on DVD in 2005. It's now out of print, but digital copy of the series is available through Amazon Video at Amazon.com. And the iTunes store, wherever you can get, digital copies.
Yeah.
So, have you seen WildC.A.T.S. before?
I think I had watched an odd episode back in the day. I definitely remember the theme tune, which everyone does after hearing it once. But yeah, like it's not something that I remember vividly. Like not something I watched throughout, constantly throughout my childhood. Just probably seen the odd one here or there.
Well, there's only 13 episodes as well.
Yeah.
So not many. I never saw it. I didn't remember it at all. Surprised really that I didn't, but I didn't see it on anything. So yeah, fresh to me. Obviously, I've since known of the comic books and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I did know it existed, unlike some that we watched. But yeah, never watched it, so I was intrigued. Okay, well, before we dig in, what's Twitter saying about WildC.A.T.S?
Yeah, so there seems to be quite a lot of a theme running in the Twitters. So we've got HLH Patterson, who says, all those people saying the X-Men cartoon had the greatest theme song have simply never heard the WildC.A.T.S theme song. It's quite bold.
I can say I've heard both and would disagree. The X-Men theme song is much better.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I prefer this theme, but I mean, the WildC.A.T.S one is catchy. I'll give you that.
Yeah, and it is good. It is good.
Yeah.
It's down to taste at the end of the day.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, the X-Men one is lacking in vocals, which the WildC.A.T.S one does have on top of it there, definitely.
Well, let's be honest, all you remember of it is WildC.A.T.S, 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 WildC.A.T.S.
Yeah. The bit at the end, the one and only WildC.A.T.S. That was pretty good as well. Yeah,
it is a good theme tune. It is a good theme tune, to be fair.
It is a good theme. Yeah. Reading Retro says, is there a cartoon more relentlessly 90s than WildC.A.T.S?
No, yeah, to be fair, it is like I would call it the wrong side of the 90s.
Woke up on the wrong side of the 90s.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite nice to be back in the 90s. We've done a lot of, obviously, for those that have been listening all the way through, this is how we started. We did loads of episodes on the 90s, and then we were like, let's branch out, let's do all the others. So I feel like it's been a while since we've done a classic 90s one. But yeah, to come back into the 90s, it's like, oh yes, this bit of the 90s.
This is a strong return to the 90s.
Obviously, you know, this is going to sound like really obvious. The 90s is a progression of the 80s, so there's going to be similarities. This is like the hair metal strain, I would say.
Oh yeah.
And it can be seen in the soundtrack, in the characters, the hair metal strain of the 90s, and as well. The trouble is, it's heavy on the obviously the comic books are very similar. The Jim Lee art and that kind of art of the 90s comic books, which I'm not a fan of.
Yeah.
So, but you know, again, taste.
Yeah, but yeah, it's a good, almost rhetorical question there from reading retro.
Yeah, I mean, it's true though. Yeah, it is. You know, painfully 90s.
Really is. We've got the Antifa N, controversial Twitter name. It says the most disappointing part of Wildstorm, which is the comic book series, is that there's no reference to the theme song from the Wildcats cartoon.
Yeah.
Which, yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I mean, like, there should have been. There's many opportunities there to just put it in. You know, I think they did have a thread on that tweet where they did an example of people trying to fit it into a conversation, which is also pretty interesting. Just people saying Wildcats a lot, I think.
Yeah.
Responded with questions about Wildcats with the word Wildcats again. You know, yeah. I mean, yeah, it's, you know, I think theme songs should be, you know, instrumental and, you know, referenced in all versions of media.
Yeah, especially,
you know,
when
it's just something we don't get enough.
You know, when it's a good one, you kind of want it to pop up, don't you?
Yeah.
Like, if they decided, oh, we're making a film of Wildcats, the first thing you'd say is, are you? But then you'd be like, you know, the theme's got to be in there somewhere.
Yeah. That's it. Yeah. Like they've got like a shopping list that they're taking to the shops, and then like on the back someone's like written the lyrics and said, they're like, oh, what are we getting from shopping? And he's like, Wildcats. you know, so I'm just spitballing. Yeah. You know, it should happen. We've already said it about the Spider-Man theme, though, haven't we? You know, like that keeps popping up.
You need it in there.
Yeah, and it works. You're like, hey, that's
here
good.
we go.
And then finally, we've got Eshon Bourne, who says, up until a half hour ago, I had forgotten, as I've never seen it, the Wildcats cartoon was a thing. Boy, it's bad.
Well, there you go. There's no beating around the bush there.
Yeah.
Pretty straightforward understanding of their opinion on Wildcats there.
Yeah, I like that they went to Twitter afterwards to just be like, but warning, guys.
Yeah.
Heads up.
Yeah.
It's bad.
Fair point. You know, you got to watch it and you got to tell people. It's what we do. It's good to hear other people out there doing it more simply as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
Nice.
Well. Is that? Are we done for tweets?
That's it. That's the last one. Yeah.
Okay. Well, Wildcats.
Wildcats.
If only we got sponsored to say it on this episode.
I know. Imagine.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Come on. If anyone wants to get in touch, we will happily receive due credit for the mentioning over and over again. But yeah, the first thing, let's talk about the theme tune. We've talked about it a bit. Obviously, it's belting.
It's good. Yeah. Oh yeah, it's a solid one. Yeah.
And the thing is, with a theme tune like that, you start off like on a high.
Mm.
And sometimes I feel that can be a bad thing.
If there's no high afterwards, then yeah, that's bad. I mean,
It's
like, imagine
gotta
just
follow.
going up a roller coaster and, like, you know, you're right at the top, and then there's only one way down after that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, imagine a roller coaster where it was like you go up the start and then just go round.
You just go horizontal forever afterwards.
And then it goes down on its own afterwards. You got off it already.
The roller coaster that never goes anywhere.
Like, I'm not saying that's necessarily what happened in this, but it's what happened in this.
But yeah, it's, if you've ever been to Jim Lee's theme park, the WildC.A.T.S coaster, you're never coming off that.
No, because it's
a
just
one-way trip.
Your high begins too soon.
Yeah, that's what he tells, like, his kids or whatever when one of their pets dies. It's like, oh, yeah, it's all right. They just went on the WildC.A.T.S roller coaster. Oh, okay, cool.
They're all the way up there.
Yeah.
It's so, like, it's so, I mean, it is so 90s, and down to the very story and the concept, in which every character is just defined by their power.
Yeah.
Like, you don't really have a character, they just have powers.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And you've got to have someone that's like a ninja-y samurai character in there. You've got to have a load of metal tubes that are a bit like, you know, they're not like straight tubes, they're like metal tentacles, basically. But like wire, and that's everywhere. Like, everyone's got them going on somewhere. The suits are just so upsetting. They don't go with it. Do you know what I mean? Like, they don't.
Yeah.
You just, like, they would never, ever, ever wear that. This is. I feel like this is partially, you know, when they started to make superhero films, and they were like, "Oh, don't give them their costumes because they'll look silly."
Yeah.
The 90s were probably a big part of that.
Yeah, that's probably right.
It's very similar to X-Men in its quality of animation, in that it's low.
Yeah.
But it is, isn't it? It's not, you know, there's a lot of action and there's not a lot of frames to fit it.
That's right, yeah. Like, things happen and you're like, oh, okay. It's kind of like reading the comic in a way, because there's just like, there's some gaps in between things that have happened, and you kind of have to put them together because the frame rate is, like, so painfully low.
Yeah, and everything's just this. So we watched the first episode, as always. It's throwing a lot at you, isn't it?
Yeah.
The whole history of essentially sort of, what are they, like an alien race that have
two alien races were battling it out before, while we were just cavemen, and then one of them shot down the other one, and then one of them's bad, one of them's good, and then now the descendants of those races have coming back to fight each other again continually for some reason.
Imagine landing on, imagine being like a, you know, in the future, we've got a sci-fi future, we're having Star Wars, you know, we're in spaceships, we're pretty advanced. Now imagine landing on a planet of cavemen, and going, I'm gonna have a kid with one of them.
Weird. Very weird.
You have to get pretty low, I imagine, to get to that point. There's a lot of questions involved.
Yeah, I mean, you know, post spacecraft crash depression is quite, it hits quite heavy. And I mean
there's a couple of them that have lived for like 1,000 years or something. Yeah.
And like like in all that time, they've like couldn't find anything better to do than just like fight the people that got them there in the first place or whatever.
Yeah.
Right.
But maybe they didn't have kids with cavemen, is what I was getting at. Maybe they were like, I'm going to wait a few 100 years until there's some civilization.
Yeah, and then have kids with them.
Yeah.
Weird. I mean, the thing, like, is as abstract and sort of nonsensical it does also sound like probably the plot to, like, I'd say 90% of like YA novels are like young adult novels are pretty much like, oh yeah, there was this thing that happened a really long time ago, and now you're the descendant of them.
Yeah.
And you've just found out now. Like that's the main guy in the story of Wildcats. That's pretty much, you know.
Do you know what as well? It's a bit of a it's a bit of an Inhumans ripoff as well, isn't it?
Mm.
So if you've read any of the Inhumans, which is another comic series, obviously there's a TV series that lasted for like 3 episodes or something. I'm not entirely sure, but they are like kind of the same sort of thing where they're an ancient race. They, aliens came down. Who you might recognize the aliens? They're in Captain Marvel and stuff.
Mm.
The blue guys. I don't know if they're blue in Captain. Are they blue?
I haven't seen Captain Marvel.
I don't think they are, but there's blue. I'm getting ahead of myself. Basically, aliens have kids with cavemen.
Yeah. Eiffel 65. Watch the video.
And then
blue aliens, and then
essentially that's exactly it.
they cavemen birth their babies basically.
Yeah. But ages later, when they've got the DNA, they're exposed to certain technical gas or something.
Yeah.
In the same way they were in this, and then turned into Inhumans / Wildcats.
Yeah, and the weird thing I found about that was that, like, he was wearing a suit underneath all of that. Like not only was there like a giant weird creature man inside of him with like who was 80% metal or whatever, but he was also wearing an outfit, and it was an outfit because they said nice outfit to him.
Which is
like, oh, that's just his body.
I'm sure they're joking because he definitely has the worst outfit.
Yeah, he does have the worst. Yeah,
like, it really is upsetting.
I think that's even. I found that concept more strange than most things in the show. Was that like the weird idea that whatever alien creature lived inside you also like had the time to sort of like change its wardrobe before it then became a part of. That's just strange.
Yeah.
Like, it could be just wearing anything. Do you know what I mean? It could be in a zoot suit inside you. Like, that's weirder than it being naked to me.
That's almost, that's what makes a good story, is when you can say to yourself, is that inside of me? Is that real? Who knows?
Don't know.
But yeah, it was very it didn't have a lot going for it.
Yeah, it's very much action orientated, isn't it? Like, the story's pretty much like flat. You're like, yeah, this is just some sci-fi nonsense. Like,
it was annoying me. Right, there's things like so the villains are these little green guys that jump inside people's heads.
Yeah.
And take over them. Fair enough, whatever.
As long as you've got a magnet on your head.
Yeah, they kept calling them Daemonites, but I think it might actually be pronounced Demonite. Minor detail, doesn't really matter, but I think that might be the case. But these guys, these are the villains, and they're led by some sort of really powerful, negative Wolverine.
Yeah. If you had a picture of Wolverine on Microsoft Paint and then press Control-I, then that's who they're ruled by.
That's the character. Put some cosmic energy around his head.
Yeah, you put like Ghost Rider's head on him or something.
Yeah.
That's pretty much it. Yeah.
And that's essentially what the Wildcats is, I suppose. It is like X-Men meets Inhumans in the 90s. Jim Lee was a big part of the sort of X-Men revival in the 90s. So it makes a lot of sense. A clear similarities. I'm not sure if he did X-Men after or before this. I don't know if you
no, I'm sure.
But I imagine that, you know, the animated series probably came after.
Yeah.
And that was sort of why they made it. But I don't know as it did very well, seeing as it's only got 13 episodes.
Yeah. X-Men certainly had a few more than that.
Yeah. But X-Men had, you know, it had sort of more of a prestige to it, and I guess a better story.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I think so. I think at least that one makes sense. Like, in the grand scheme of things, like, oh yeah, mutants. They're
it's
real.
an interesting thing. Like in comic books, sort of the 80s was kind of like a massive revival in comic book story. So, I mean, a lot of you may know it. I don't know, you may not, but sort of writers became more prominent in comics in the 80s. But then in the 90s, it flipped, and the artists became like rock stars in comics. But it was this strange thing where suddenly the 80s stories got loads better, and then in the 90s they absolutely nosedived because they were I mean, to be fair, the art did get better in the 90s to some degree, till it was, you know, the less stylized stuff, I would say. But then you had all the problems of the story because, you know, people that were trained to write were no longer writing them.
Yeah.
And then you got sort of the whole story was just based around what do I want to draw.
Yeah.
Which is not always the best thing.
No, and this feels like that, doesn't it? Like, you know, you've got all these characters that look like they're already like in a catalog for, you know, for kids to buy as toys. And everything else is just sort of like whatever. It's just gone by the wayside. Like the dialogue was questionable. So many like weird action one-liners that were really forced, or like just gimmicks. Like the way that like Grifter just kept calling everyone Jack all the time. That's such like a 80s movie thing. Like, I still really don't understand why that was ever a thing. It's just like a weird insult. Just call everyone Jack.
Hey, Jack.
It's like, that's nobody's name. Does he just not know anybody's name?
he just doesn't care to remember them at all.
Like the Grifter backstory is that like he's got absolute, really terrible like retention of names, so he just calls everyone Jack.
Because that's how shallow the characters are.
Yeah.
As well, that could be a real thing. And I think this is the problem when your character is the sum of its powers, sort of thing. Like, I think if you look over time, like superheroes, we kind of know that, you know, powers and stuff are cool, but it's not what makes. That's not really the superhero genre. Like, it obviously is a big part of it, but the main thing is, and you know, their actual. I mean, look at Batman. Batman's got no powers. None of his. I mean, there's some of his villains with powers, but everyone loves like the whole Batman rogues gallery. Yeah. But it's not about their powers. You know, they've got little gimmicks and stuff that make them interesting and things like that. But it's about their characters, isn't it?
Yeah, that's it.
And that's what they lost, I think, when they in the 90s, when they were like, this power, this power, this power. And I think a lot of it came out of the X-Men, where they had loads of different powers, but they still had good writers on the X-Men. Yeah.
Like each character still had a personality, didn't they?
Yeah.
Like, and you sort of know it by watching an episode or whatever. Like you still know who's who. Whereas these all just kind of felt like they could have all been the same person, essentially. Yeah. Like they were just smart talking, whatever, like ready to pull the trigger action.
And that's, they didn't have that necessary history that you can
No.
go in with that all guns blazing with the X-Men, because you know that when they were first created and a lot of the work was done by, like, say, Stan Lee's whole thing was about the person, like the man behind the mask.
Yeah.
And then you've got sort of Chris Claremont had been writing X-Men for ages, so he knew these characters inside and out. And then they bring all these action and big, you know, like amazing artists and stuff for for the stories, but they've still got that character, whereas you start off without all that back history with those artists, then you're just going to have fluff, really, aren't you?
Yeah.
And it shows in the animation as well, I think.
What was your favourite thing about WildCats?
The theme tune.
Yeah.
Easy.
No, yeah.
But in the actual show, it is genuinely quite hard to say. I don't know as I liked much about it, truthfully. I thought it was really boring, and I really struggled to get into it. I don't know. I can't really think of anything, as much as I am trying, positive about it. Is there anything that you would like? Anything I missed, do you think?
Nah, I don't think so. I don't remember there being anything stand out that was like, oh, that's pretty cool. I remember, like, I was thinking that, you know, the weird hidden reptile people that were disguised as like Rorschach were quite intimidating to a degree, but then I was like, yeah, it's just because it's Rorschach, I guess. Like, yeah, it's just, you know, that old noir garb is just kind of weird. I think that's just all that makes it strange. And it's like, you know, that wasn't even them that did that, so it's like yeah, I think there wasn't anything, no real big takeaway, I don't think, that was like, oh yeah, this was really cool.
Yeah.
So what was your least favorite thing?
Oh man, it's a big thing. I think that the whole thing about, you know, the lack of character in any of it, like, it's hard to say, like, there's Grifter stands out a little bit because he's, you know, like overboard action, and then there's the big guy who's visually very different, but personality wise none of them had anything going for them. And it was just terrible how, like, 1 minute, so you've got this whole rivalry between Grifter and, what is it, like, Warblade. They call him Warblade, so he's got, like, his hands can turn into, he's a bit like a metal Carnage or something, isn't he? They can turn into any weapon or something, knives or something like that. I think Terminator 2. And they're constantly arguing, and then at the very end they just like make up. They're like, oh yeah, hey, thanks for the great name, Warblade. And it's like, well, that's not a great name, but whatever. And then they just shake hands and they're best mates, and it's just like, this has come from nowhere. It's just the story was terrible. The dialogue was terrible. It didn't look great. I didn't like much of it. The theme tune was good.
Theme tune was good, yeah. No, yeah, I found that weird as well, because I swear when he came out, like, after she, like, that one of them had taken the magnet off his head, so the green thing came out of it. This is all part of the story. He was like, oh, Warblade is here, or whatever. Like, he'd named himself. In that whole time, he was possessed by some sort of green alien. Like, instead of thinking about what to do, he was trying to come up with, like, his cool name for which is then like
Grifter came up with.
Yeah, which he didn't. So yeah, strange. So yeah, there you go. That just shows you, like, how solid the writing was.
Yeah, I mean, what did you dislike most about it?
I think just the inconsistencies. Like, there was this whole thing about how the reptilian things were hunting him down, and then they managed to, like, throw a teleportation thing inside of his pocket, with like one like, which was like, what? Like this tiny device like flew into his. He didn't even have a pocket there either. Like if you look at, he's wearing a t-shirt with no pocket, and somehow it slips into the top of his t-shirt pocket.
You've all by now pressed Control I on a picture of Wolverine, and you can see that there's no pockets.
There's no pocket there. It just doesn't work. And then they teleport away, and then all this nonsense happens, and then the robot thing they've got back there can teleport anyway, so she just teleports them back, and it's like, oh man, like there's just so many other things you could have done. Like why is half of this happening if these people have these abilities? It was just a writing nightmare, wasn't it, really? Like, yeah. So yeah, I wasn't a fan of that.
No, all in all, the wrong side of the 90s.
Hey.
Full circle. All right then. Well, we've talked about it, and we're gonna now move on and surprise you with our final thoughts.
Shocking reviews. WildC.A.T.S HQ. Looks like we better get ready for another mission. Hey, you guys get in here. I need some help.
Hey, it's me, the big guy. Hey, Grifter, you have seen my shoes about?
Looks like they're still on your feet, Jack.
It's me, the samurai lady. I have my sword at the ready. Does anyone need anything cutting?
Cut me a sandwich. I need lunch, Jack. Yeah.
Finally, I am here, the leader of this team, with no descript characteristics whatsoever. But I am over 1,000 years old. Hey, anyone seen any cave ladies about?
You better watch it. Keep it in your pants, Jack.
Was I late? It's me, the other female member of the team, with less characteristics than the leader of the team. Can I help in any way?
Just wear something that shows your buns more, Jack.
That's pretty sexist of you. I'm a black belt in karate, but I need a name.
Here's the name. 'Cause I've got a problem with you, whether you like it or not. But you know what? Now I think about it, you're all right, Jack.
You know what, Grifter? That's a real good name. I shall be called Warjack.
The one and only WildC.A.T.S.
Okay, so here at Toon Jam, we have a 3-point rating system that goes as follows. Thumbs up, you're a black belt in karate. You're fighting off whatever comes at you. It's all good. Thumbs down. Oh, that blasted alien race that is constantly jumping into people's heads through head stamps. Oh, bad stuff. And shaky middle, starting a family with a caveman or woman. So good, bad, in the middle, dubious. So
yes.
WildC.A.T.S, episode 1, your thoughts?
Yeah, so, you know, starting strong with the theme, not too bad. Then we go in and we follow some guy that we know nothing about. Weird character guy. He's very broad in the chest, kicks through doors all the time, you know, runs around rooftops and whatever. And, you know, at that point I was already starting to check out. There's, you know, it doesn't really get much better than that. I mean, he gets transformed into, you know, a guy that's probably even less likable than his already pretty 90s hardcore self that he was. We get a lot of action lines. We get, you know, a lot of outfits that shouldn't exist, story moments that shouldn't exist. You know, there's a lot of things that, you know, maybe in another timeline they're not here for, and probably for good reason. You know, there wasn't any characters that I was like, yeah, that's the guy. Yeah, that's my favorite. This person, because they were all just like whatever.
Yeah.
Didn't really do anything for me. No story, no humor really. Other than what I laughed at instead of with. And so there wasn't really much there. It didn't look great in movement. I mean the characters don't look fantastic in the first place, if you ask me. But my opinion. So yeah, not really much to go on for Wildcats. I think it's got to be a thumbs down from me, really. Couldn't tell you what my favourite part was, because it was all very much once you'd gone up just horizontal from on that roller coaster.
That's it. The world's worst roller coaster.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, thumbs down. Right, well, what to say? You've covered a lot, but I guess I can just summarise. It had no story. It had bad art, poor animation. The soundtrack overall was pretty lame, bar the theme tune, which was really good. So it did have that going for it. However, the lack of plot, character, enjoyable aesthetic in general dipped it so low. I cannot explain how low it dipped it. This is, I think, for me, one of the worst things we've watched, because there's so many other. Obviously, we've said before, the 90s is full of like repeats of the same sort of stories. Like the Ninja Turtles stories, the X-Men stories, and so on and so forth. And this is obviously one of the X-Men stories, but it has nothing of its own to give to you. There's no originality whatsoever. I just don't know what you're getting from it that isn't already out there and done better. So yeah, a heaping thumbs down from me.
Oh
boy.
The one and only Wildcats.
So there you go. We've been saying it for a while. We've been due a stinker, and we found it.
Yeah.
We made that happen, unfortunately. So let's hope we're not onto a new streak, and we can lift it up again. But yeah, that was not enjoyable.
No. I'm pretty sure it's only thought of fondly because of the theme. That's my conclusion.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that is definitely. I mean, the theme tune is belting.
Yeah.
It doesn't deserve the theme tune it's got, to be honest.
No, it doesn't. No.
And it's a shame, really. But there you go. Okay, well, I mean, what did you think at home? Maybe you're listening and you're yelling into your earbud or computer or whatever it is you listen to it on. Maybe you're like, you guys are so wrong. This is, the renaissance of animation. Well, let us know. Either send us a comment. You can get in touch with us on the three daemonites of the internet: Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at ToonJamPod. Send us a comment. Let us know what you thought. We're not always right. We are aware. Don't forget, you can check out old episodes over on our YouTube page, and we also have a Patreon for bonus episodes. We go through all sorts of different themes on there. We're currently doing Heroes Remix, Heroes from the Past, brought to the future. And then, of course, we have our shop, which is bit.ly/ToonJam shop, with all sorts of goodies on there that you can purchase. Otherwise, thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed today's episode, please feel free to rate and review us. It really helps us out. But other than that, thank you so much, and until next time, stay jammy.
Hey everyone, thank you for listening. If you want to help the show keep going, you can be extra jammy by heading over to our Patreon page at patreon.com/ToonJamPod. Here you can get a shout out on the show or unlock bonus episodes. Ratings and reviews anywhere you listen to the podcast also really help us out. So thank you, and stay jammy.